that I'm blessed. It's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a check.
Joe Mastriona, welcome to the show. Am I saying that right?
Mastriona, yeah.
Mastriona.
Yeah, you were.
I said Mastriona.
Just a little bit off, but it's not easy.
It's more of a Latin pronunciation of the name.
Mastriona.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know Joe, I met Joe, probably 6 years ago. Full-blown real estate investor, flipper, really involved in wholesaling, which is, I know, a hot topic right now. A lot of changes are happening in that industry. And then we met again. We sort of crossed paths again. That's almost 4 years ago, where you helped me locate a builder for a piece of land that I was selling. And I think that was a pretty good deal. You made some money. We made some money. Brad made a lot of money. Yeah. and
Brad
built
made the most money.
Built an amazing house right next to me. I don't know if I ever shared the story with you, but when I had bought that house with the land, I structured the deal where the lender issued a loan for one loan for both parcels, but title only was encumbering the subject property. So the way I was able to pull it off is right after we closed, I sold it to Brad, but I didn't have to give a penny back to the bank or pay any tax on it.
Nice.
So
that's pretty good.
I know. And I think we lucked out because there were multiple offers on that house at the time. And I just asked the listing agent, hey, what's really important to your seller? You have these other offers, but I had found out that the other offers were just for the subject property. They said, we don't want the other land. And I knew where that was coming from. It was because lending was very difficult to pull off one loan on two parcels.
Sure.
Typically it's one loan on the subject, and then they're going to have to go get a land loan, basically, right? Or a construction loan, which I don't think anybody wanted to do. So I just took a chance. I had no idea I was going to be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
I just was like, I'll buy both.
Right.
So we wrapped up both, and I figured I could probably sell it. But
what was your backup plan was basically hey, if I can't sell it, then I've just got this nice piece of land that my kids can play on.
I mean, this might, I don't know, I might get some hate for this a little bit, but sometimes in real estate, you have to make decisions where you have a particular intention, you have the best interest of everybody involved, but if I couldn't have secured financing for the land, I simply would have had to go back to the seller and say, we tried, but I can't do it.
Yeah.
But I still want to buy the house. And that may have been 3 or 4 weeks into, I think it was a 45-day escrow. So I think it would have been 3-4 weeks in. And my thought was at that point, they're probably going to be willing to renegotiate.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So anyway, but it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah.
Okay. So, but for those that don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself? Who's Joe Mastriona, and walk us through kind of your real estate career. How did you get involved initially in real estate, and what were you doing? And then how did you end up building, I know in the prime of that operation, you guys were just crazy, right? So crazy that you got burnt out.
Yes.
So I want to talk about all of it. But.
Sure. Well, I started real estate back in 2005. I think I went to actually it was 2004. I went to a Robert Kiyosaki event.
What were you doing before? I mean, what were you doing before?
I was a school teacher.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, most people don't. I was a school teacher, and
the heart of a servant.
I coached some high school ball, and I loved coaching. The teaching aspect was good. I really enjoyed kids. I did not enjoy the minimal amounts of pay that they were giving me.
Sure.
And so, I was working some nights at a bar and thinking, why did I go to school to work 2 jobs, and I'm barely scraping by? And I didn't know at the time, Darik, that I was an entrepreneur. I just knew that I really disliked working for anybody else. Anytime I ever had a job, I struggled. I really did. I got fired from jobs. I quit jobs.
Do you know every job I've ever had, I've been fired from?
Yeah.
Or I've quit.
I've either quit or I've been fired. Yes.
Hey, but do you think that is Like you said, you didn't realize you were an entrepreneur, but is that something you feel like you're born with or that you create?
I think it could be both. I think for me personally, I am wired that way. I'm wired that way. And I just, was young. I didn't know even what that meant, in terms of, I just knew that I didn't like working for other people. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so, but I think it could be both. I think people can become entrepreneurs that maybe aren't wired like me and like you. But I think for us, like, I think all the time it's a motivating factor for me to, do what I do. Is the thought of having to go back and work for somebody else is almost like, and I know this is extreme and maybe dramatic, but it's like prison. It would be like a death sentence to me. And it's not, and I don't mean to sound like, people that work for somebody else, oh, they suck. And, I'm so much above them. It's not that. It's that I just, like I said, I'm wired in a certain way where I can't. I've got to be able to do my own thing. I'm a very creative guy. My mind, I've got ADD. Just learning that a couple years ago as an adult, figuring out that I had ADD.
What does that mean for you? Like, were you just, before you realized that or before you were diagnosed with it, was it something where you could not control your attention?
Did
you notice you were struggling with something or?
It was, I always struggled in school. School was hard for me. I just, honestly, it kind of sucks, because not knowing that I had this, I basically was thinking, well, I'm just not as smart as the other kids. So I developed a strategy, and most people that, I've researched, talked to now and discussed this, that learned that they have ADD as an adult and they've always had it. We developed strategies. And that's what I did. And my strategy was to dig in and work hard. And I just outworked everybody to be barely at a level. If I had a 3.0, it was because I was digging and working. It never came easy to me. So school was difficult, and I didn't like the traditional setting and things like that. And so,
did you get bored with school?
I was bored with the whole aspect of it, I think. I just didn't like it. And an ADD brain is an interesting brain. It's not that we just learn different.
Sure.
And when I'm interested in something, man, I can focus.
It's like OCD at that point.
Hyper-focus.
Hyper-focus.
Yeah.
So you went to this Kiyosaki event.
Yeah,
right?
went to the Kiyosaki event. And
okay.
so
was he there or was it his?
He was. Yeah,
he was.
He was there.
Wow.
Yep.
That was probably before.
I didn't know who the heck he was. Yeah. And he had He had written the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he's gone on to write many more. And I didn't really know anything about that book or him, but he spoke to me that day like he was just talking to me one-on-one. And I was like, oh, this is it. Because up until that point, I love coaching and I still coach to this day. And like I said, I didn't mind teaching, but there was I always felt something was missing. There was just something missing and I didn't know what it was. I was like, I'm just not happy doing this. And I came away from that Kiyosaki event and I was like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And that's where that hyper focus came in. So I think it was over the summer, and I just dove in. Like I don't recommend that people do what I did because it's not very responsible. But I basically dove in and quit teaching right then and there. And I dove in. Now that caused stress because, now I don't have a paycheck. I don't have any income coming in.
So you had quit your job?
Yeah.
Wow.
I quit. Yeah.
So you were teaching, you were coaching, you quit because you see this Kiyosaki guy and you're like, dude, this is it.
Yep.
And I remember reading his books too. I mean, I still have the whole series, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What is it? Cash Flow Quadrant, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing.
Yep.
There was another one. He ended up hiring a bunch of advisors and there was a guy named Dolph DeRoos. Dolph DeRoos created a software and wrote a book about real estate investing, but this dude was from, I think, Australia.
Okay.
Or New Zealand, one of the two, but I can't remember. But I read that dude's book and I was just like, holy crap. I mean, it was just chock full of examples of creative strategies, which, Kiyosaki sort of introduced in some of his books, but just briefly, or he'd give one example. Dolph DeRussa's book was full of all of these ideas. And I think I was 19 or 20 years old when I read those, man. So
Yeah.
I think it's why it became so popular, because it's so powerful, the message in there. And it's a message
Sure.
that I don't think many people had really heard before him,
Yeah.
Or like you can really,
this stuff was life-changing for
Yeah.
me. No one explained financial intelligence like Kiyosaki was, or, probably like Dolph was, at least to me. And the vast majority of people that
Same.
I come across, they are saying the same thing. You don't learn that in school.
No.
It's one of the big problems I have at school, and the structure of how schools are run is that they don't really teach financial intelligence. They don't teach emotional intelligence. And those two are very powerful when you have those. And I'm still to this day working on both. It's not like I've mastered either one of those, and I never will. Well,
it just shows a lot about your character, man, because I think a lot of people, they get through college, they go to work, but they stop learning.
Yeah.
Right? They stop learning, or you've got another group of people where they feel like they know it all already.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that is a death trap. And that's like poison.
It is.
To get to a place where you feel like, I'm a big believer in you can learn from everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone has a
100%.
different perspective. They grew up with a different circumstance. They have something beautiful to contribute. So anyway, so Kiyosaki, you get away, you're like, I'm going in on this. And so was that like, what did that mean? Looking for properties to buy, or? Yeah.
So it was looking for properties to buy. It was just jumping in full force. And the thing is that this is what about my story is, Kiyosaki never talked about flipping homes or, any of that stuff. He was talking about holding. But the one thing is that I didn't understand the strategies well enough, or I wasn't confident enough in myself, because I was like, well, I don't really have money. And, at that time, I didn't know the strategies to get into a home with maybe, next to no money. So I was like, okay, I know this flipping thing, because I had started to study some of that and went to some other seminars, but it really sparked me. And so I was like, okay, if I buy a house, I fix it up, and then I sell it, I make money, and I'm in real estate. And so that's how I started. And I got started there, and, I probably had like 5 flips going on at once, and nothing had closed.
Oh.
And I was freaked
What year was
out.
that?
That was back in like 2005-ish, 2006.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So it was leading up to the market crash.
Yeah.
And you were just like,
I had no
holy cow.
idea.
And was this all here in Colorado?
Yeah, it was all in Colorado. That's to start. Yeah. So, and then I learned.
Well, how did you get the money though to buy that first property?
Well, hard
saving or did? Okay.
Yeah, hard money lending, and I had a little bit of cash, and then, another investor taught me how to go get private lending, and so I was like, I just getting a little bit of private lending, and getting some things going there, but nothing had closed. They were in different stages. They were either listed or being renovated, or I just bought. And so there was no money coming in. It was scary. And another investor, a seasoned one here in Denver, was like, I met him out at a property. I was looking. He's like, well, why are you closing on everything? And I was like, what else would I do? I don't understand. I just keep going, because that's who I am. I'm like, I have a target. I just run through the wall. Sometimes that's not good. And he taught me how to wholesale. He was like, just get it under contract like you're doing, and then flip it to another investor
wants to buy it. Sure.
Another flipper. And I was like, that's sounds genius. And how much money can I make from that? You know, at the time it was like, you know, $5,000, maybe 10,000 if you were lucky. And so I started to do that as well, and coinciding, and I ran them equally and realized, oh my gosh, this is like the money, you know, that I need to continue my flips. And then when my flips would hit, then I'd have a big chunk of it.
I see. Okay.
And so that's how I ran my business.
So less risk on wholesaling, less money as well.
Way less.
But you had the ability to move it quicker, build up a little cash to do your own deal.
Yes. And this was in a time where there wasn't a lot of people doing wholesale. Now wholesale's exploded and everybody wholesales now, but it was easier for me to find buyers that wanted properties.
How do you feel like the market has changed since then? Because to me, it seems like it's like everybody's doing it, right? Because all these shows have come out and kind of portray this glamorous side of things where it's easy. And dude, I mean, I haven't nearly done as many as you, but I've done some flips. We have one going on right now, actually, in Wheat Ridge, and it's a lot. It can be a lot. I just came especially if you're managing from one I just came from one in Lakewood, right? Okay. Just 8 minutes away from here. That I'm managing as well, and it is a lot. It is a lot, and I think they make it look easy on the TV shows, and they don't show you all of the real numbers, and the reality of the strain that comes with those. Do you think the time span that they showcase on these TV shows is legitimate? Like, because my thought is, okay, to pull off some of these renovations that these guys are doing and like have it done in 60 days or something seems crazy to me. But then again, maybe they've got this just limitless bucket of money where they can get everybody in there and they're not so worried about costs. I don't know. I mean, it's a process. So everything takes a certain amount of time, right? You can't just start throwing up drywall before you've framed and again, it all varies depending on the level and the scope of the rehab. Sure. So, 60 days is like cruising, on a house. I think it was very rare, and I've done well over 200 flips in my career, 250 flips. How many did you have? Like, what was the most you've had going on at one time? Including maybe what was in the pipeline. They probably had like 12 going on, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. Yeah. And a lot of guys or gals can do certain loads. Everybody's different. I realized that like 5 at a time was my max that I really felt comfortable with, and I wasn't going crazy and, now, but it's changed now for me. I don't have any interest in doing volume anymore. It actually burned me out a couple of years ago, where I just pulled back and I had to reevaluate, do I still want to do this business? I was actually hating it because it was just too much. What was the most challenging part of it? With that many flips going on, like where was it that really was the bottleneck or the thing that was driving you crazy? Managing people, managing contractors. Yeah. And it's tough, I mean, you're managing, hey, why didn't you show up? Or, you didn't follow the process and what we were doing, or just dealing with, the ins and outs of like, hey, this person needs a draw, this person needs money. And so it was just really hectic. And I'm an artist. I'm very artistic. I love to create. That's where my passion is. And that's why I wanted to do flips, I think, is because I was taking something that looked like crap and I made it look nice. But what I realized was in this whole process, Darik, is that I got caught up in the money part of it, and that it was all about volume. So if I made this amount this year, I had to make that amount. And I kept going that way. And what I realized a couple of years ago is I got done and, had one of the best years I'd ever done. Or probably the best year.
And it was December 26th, so day after Christmas. And I looked in the mirror and I felt as empty and hollow as I think I've ever felt. And I was like, what the fuck? Why do I feel this way? I should be feeling like, man, I'm on the top of the mountain. Yeah. And I didn't. And I realized that it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about goals in terms of financial. It was about loving what you do. And if you don't, if you started out, and I started out loving what I did, but then I changed it to this just huge machine, because I'm wholesaling probably 50, 60 properties a year. I'm flipping 30, a year. And it just was, for me, too much. And then also the toll that it was taking on my family. Because, my wife and I would get in arguments about, and she was right. She was just like, there was no barrier or off limits to my phone. So someone called me at dinner time, boom, I'm on the phone. If someone called me in the middle of the night, I'm on my phone. If we're at the kids something, I'm still taking phone calls. And it hit me hard. It was just like, what's important to you, Joe? My wife and my 3 kids are the most important thing, my family, like most people, and I was still there. I worked from home. I really felt like I always made my kids, Halloween parties when they were growing up and all this stuff, Christmas, whatever it was, I was there. It wasn't like I was missing it, but
you weren't present.
I wasn't fully there. I wasn't present. I was there as a body at times and kind of got a couple glimpses and showing up, but I wasn't always fully there. And I realized that's it. That's the important piece. Well, I didn't know what to do because I'm like, this is my model. How am I going to change that? And so I pulled back for a year and, just did a little bit. I would do a small little flip or a couple wholesales, maybe a condo or something. I really scaled back.
Did you feel like before you scaled back, you mentioned December 26th, you just had the best year of your life, but you felt empty and hollow? It's interesting. Like, why do you think success and fulfillment are so elusive, right? It's hard to find that combo. And I don't know if it's I think with men in our society, there is this sort of, and it's changed a lot, right? Especially now with a lot of women in the workforce that are taking on that role. But I think it is just bred within us to go hunt and kill, right? To go hunt and kill. And I don't think it's anything that you or anybody should be ashamed of, but the fact that you had the awareness to say, man, I thought this was it and it's not. And what is it that I really care about? And being willing to pivot, because even somebody that has that awareness might go, well, yeah, but I still got to make all this money.
Yeah.
So
right. Well, you get used to living a certain lifestyle too. Yeah, and there's fear there. They're like, oh my gosh, and there's a patriarchy of that's still here. It's less, and that's good. Like you said, women are getting into the workforce and, men are realizing like, gosh, I don't have to shoulder that whole load. But it's hard because that's how we were raised, provide for your family. And then we take it to a new level.
As an entrepreneur.
We take it to a whole new level. It's like, we're making lots of money. And then I felt like, damn, if I don't make lots of money, I can't give them what I've been giving them. And then I'll be a shitty dad or, they'll look at me. And the reality, when talking to my wife and then really checking in with myself is that's not true at all. They just want me. They just want me to be around. They want me to be fully present and to care about them and love them. And when I fully embraced that, not that I didn't know that before, but I fully embraced it, I think things changed. Yeah. And it felt lighter.
Yeah. And I think as an entrepreneur too, there's this, it is very different than having a job, right? Because you have a job, you have a paycheck, or so you think, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're sitting in on the board meetings making those decisions, though, you don't really have a lot of control over that. But so there's this drive, because there's almost, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but for me, there was always this underlying fear of like, dude, I could make $1 million in a year, but there's still a fear of like, well, fuck, what if I don't make anything?
Right.
And so it
Right.
kind of creates this compulsion to keep going at a super high level.
Yeah.
And then ultimately can lead to burnout.
And that's what happened for me. Yeah, it led to burnout. I burned myself out, and I don't think it's not, for a time there, I was really upset at the industry, right? I was being a victim. I blamed it for a little bit. But the reality was it was me, it was how I was approaching it. It was my expectations. It was me bringing in all those fears like you have too. I can't even say that I still have exercised that demon. I still have fears as an entrepreneur of like, shit, what if I don't make any money and we lose everything and all this, this stuff that you make up in your head. But what you have to realize, and what I'm trying to realize, is that at the end of the day, if you did lose everything, I know how to build it back up. And the real important part is, again, is my family, just being connected with them. And so, over the last 2 years, I coach my daughter's fast pitch travel softball team. So that's like a full-time job. I'm not sure if I knew what I was getting into that when she asked me to do it. But I love it. I love it. I love being connected with her. And before, I coached my son's tackle football teams. And then our littlest one, I've coached her softball team. And man, that is what it's all about for me. Of course, you've got to make money. I wish I could make money coaching softball. That'd be great. Because I really love that. I love coaching. I'm a natural born coach. But I think you can have a balance, and that's what I've structured it. And being able to tell yourself, Darik, what I finally was able to do is to tell myself, hey, you deserve this. You deserve to have balance in your life. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they can't, because they're just like, I got to grind and I got to go, and I got to go hard. And that's what I did. That's what I know you've did. And a lot of entrepreneurs that I know have done. They go so hard. To what end though? Where does it stop? And it was not stopping for me. It was always like, I got to get higher. I got to get more, and I was like, okay, that's enough. You're good. But I didn't know how to restructure my business. And then, my wife, who's an agent, who's a real estate agent, she would just list our flips, and she raised our kids. She was just doing this very part-time. Well, when I backed out of it, she didn't really have a job either. And so we're like sitting there like, okay, well, what are we going to do? I'm still making some money, real estate, and we have rentals and Airbnbs and things like that. But she came in and was like, what if we did higher end flips? Because she questioned me, what do you not like about the flips? I'm like, it's too stressful. I'm moving all the time and I can't juggle all these balls. When I was younger, I could. I just had the stamina to juggle it all. And I'm like, I don't want to anymore. I don't want to work 70 hours a week and then try to go to the kids' stuff and then not be there. And she said, well, why don't we do like luxury flips? It's the same thing, especially for me. I've done 250 flips. She's like, the process is the same. It's just higher dollar amounts.
When she brought that up to you, what was the first thought you have privately that you thought about?
Oh, fuck. Because it was like, because of the risk, right? I was thinking, oh gosh, man, and I think your risk aversion gets less the older you get.
Oh, the older you get.
The older you get, I think. Before I had tons of tolerations for risk. And so I was like, oh shit, she's talking about like buying, $1 million property or 1.5 million, and you put several $100,000s into them to make it really high end. And then you sell them out at the higher end. As I thought about it, I was like, you know what? She's right. There is something there. And, started running numbers and looking at it and doing my research and realized like, gosh, I could make, the amount of money that I was making easily, doing like 3 of these a year, 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that felt like someone just took the freaking 1,000-pound elephant off of me.
Yeah, sure.
And then she appealed. She's smart. She knows me and she's smart. She appealed to my creative side and she goes, then you can, and she loves to be creative too. She likes to design. She's like, then we can pour our hearts and our total love into these projects. Because she knew I wasn't doing that when I had, doing 20 or 30 a year. There's no way I could.
It's just a machine. It's
just
process.
Like, get this done. Get it done. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Just get it done.
Hey, I have a question on that, actually. Sorry to interrupt you, but I was just thinking, so 2 questions. One, was there ever like a particular margin you were kind of targeting, just in general, or was it totally case by case? Like, were you willing to do a deal where you might only make 10 grand versus 100 on like a mid-level flip, or what were you really targeting for profit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that, we have like a spreadsheet that I, have worked off of that will do calculations.
Okay.
So I put everything in there and then it gives me my return. So I really didn't want to be doing anything less than 10% return. And
are you like calculating opportunity costs going, hey, like this one I'm going to make more, but it's also going to take us longer to do it because of what has to be done at this particular property?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that calculates in that percentage,
And are you looking at time of year as well?
That's a great question. And it's funny that you mentioned it because that is something that we are looking at now very hard. My business coach was always trying to get me to do that. But because of the volume that we had to do, I just couldn't figure it out. I was like, there's no, I just can't.
Just
I can't
more
make
is
this
better
work.
and it's going to be fine.
Better.
And if we lose here, we're going to make a lot here.
Exactly. And I thought that was safer too, because I was like, well, I have, if I've got 15 going on, and 2 are dogs, the other ones will carry. And I'm not saying that that's not true, but it also, it just led to that burnout, like I said. And so I think, we're looking at, now we look at time of year. When is our buying model? And now we go, and again, it's not like I'm an expert at this aspect of it yet, Darik. We're just starting this. We've got a couple under our belts right now. But I want to structure it in a way where, we're buying, pretty much I want to be coming out in the springtime on market with those.
So is now your buying season?
So now is our buying season. Yeah. And I just really crank up and I want to buy now. And the dream, man, I've always had this dream and I'd never been able to allow myself, because people might be out there being like, dude, you're an entrepreneur. You can do whatever you want, right? My kids think that you own your own business, you do whatever you want. Well, there's yes and no, right? And so I've always wanted to take the summer off. I'm an entrepreneur because I like to create things. I don't really like to work that hard. It's not that I haven't worked that hard. I really have worked really hard, but I don't enjoy that.
You're being more intelligent with your time.
Yeah, I just want to be smarter. I want to work smarter.
You're being picky because you've done the like balls to the wall. I'm going to do as much as I can.
Yeah.
Got burnt out. And now it's like, how can I be strategic, still have my time, right? Like I got to make money, but how do I do it in a way that's really fulfilling this area of my life that matters more to me?
Right.
Right. By the way, if Soli's listening you should turn it off right now so you don't hear the taking the summers part off. She like her whole dream, man, is to go and live in Europe for a couple months a year.
Yes, that's ours too. Yes. I mean, that's what we want to do. I mean, that's our plan in the next 4 years. I got to get, my two older kids, 16 and 14, they're from a previous marriage. So, I got to get them through high school. And then, that's 4 years because my daughter's in ninth grade now. And then that's the plan.
And that's perfect,
to go.
right? Because it gives you plenty of time to do more.
I've got a little bit of a ramp.
At the high. You've got a ramp. Plus, it gives you time to build in maybe some structure and process. So if you have a project going while you're in Europe or away, you can still manage to get it done.
Yep.
What do you think the biggest risk is at that price point right now in the market?
Well, I mean, I think, from my research and stuff like that, I think when you're getting into like a 3 million plus deal, there's a lot less buyers for those. So we try to stay in that exit of 2 million, because those are more affluent buyers. And a lot of the times what I'm seeing is they're paying cash. They're not really relegated to a mortgage, and so that's good, but there is still risk there, of course. I mean, we're risking, but as my wife said, she's like, well, how's that any different? If you're risking, let's say $1 million or 1.5, then if you were doing 3 flips, you bought them at 500,000.
Your risk is spread out a little bit more, but it's the same dollar.
But it's the same, it's the same dollar amount. I mean, the market turning or quote unquote crashing, who knows? I lived through that one in 2008, and it was crazy. But in the same sense, people get through it. You have to have multiple strategies. So, I mean, if you can't exit, you got to be able to like, hey, can we rent this? Or can we Airbnb it? Back in 2008, there was no such thing as Airbnb. So people were just renting them or losing them. So there is risk.
And at those higher price points, if the house is larger, you also have the ability to do assisted living. You can do not a rehab, but like a sober living or rehab, something where you can put multiple beds in the room.
Right.
I think you have more options with a bigger property. Yeah. But when you're negotiating a deal or you're running through numbers on a potential opportunity that you have at that price point, let's say you're looking at ARV of call it 2 million. Are you going, okay, all of the comps support 2, but I could end up getting a buyer that tries to offer us 1.8. Are you doing a reduction on the ARV, even though the comps and the market supports it? Are you working your numbers off of that higher end value, or are you cutting it to be more conservative?
We run those numbers and that spreadsheet off of best case scenario. This is what I think I can get and what I want. And then here's worst case scenario.
Am I okay with worst case?
And if we can survive the worst case, we go forward. Okay. And what I mean by survive is I don't want to make any, it's not like I don't want to make any money. And that's not your worst day anyways. If you don't make any money, and I've done that on flips. And if you haven't done that on a flip, you haven't done enough flips and you haven't been in the game long. Or if you've lost money on flips, we have, you haven't been in long enough. It's just part of it. You don't, all you can do is plan for the worst case scenario and what you think. And I learned that from, I can't remember, it was a very high level investor. I think it was, and it wasn't in a personal setting, but it was like Ray Dalio, who is like one of the, if not the legends of,
what's his book that, have you read that book that he came out with? Damn it. I'm going to come up with the name. I'll post the link in the description, but it's a spectacular book that he wrote, Ray Dalio. I know Anthony Robbins talks about it a lot. Principles? I don't know.
Yeah. So he said that, he was like, I look at, people always look at what the highest upside is. He's like, I of course look at that, but he's like, what is my lowest side that I can survive this investment? If I can't survive the investment, I don't do it.
Let me ask you. So let's say you're looking at the worst case scenario. Can I survive it? This is worst case. Are you 1031ing everything? Are you then factoring taxes into it? And is there any way to strategically avoid capital gains, or you just it's part of it no matter
unfortunately not, and not in flipping. You have to hold it or own it for a certain amount of time. Now, if you got stuck with it and you had to rent it out, I think you have to hold it. I think 2 years. 2 years. And so then you can 1031 exchange that,
Sure. But with the flips, are you factoring that in as well? Or
with getting taxed?
Just with your net on an opportunity.
Sure.
Like, hey, this is our worst case, but then you got to deduct tax, or you're already deducting tax when you figure out your worst case?
I mean, I already figure in tax for the worst case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just kind of see where you are.
What do you calculate that at? Is that 25%?
Yeah, probably around 25%. Yeah. And it's a variable, right? Because, your CPA or tax strategist, which I have, is going to meld all of that stuff together.
Sure.
So it's difficult, but I would say about 25% is something to use as a barometer. Yeah.
You ever think you'll build?
Well, I did some builds with Brad.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I'd consider it again, because what we like to do is with these higher end flips, I mean, we are making them luxury, really badass high end stuff.
God, you must have a crazy interview process for contractors with luxury stuff, because you got to make sure the work is perfect, because somebody at that price point, I feel like, is really particular.
Yeah.
They're really looking at all that stuff to see if the work's done right, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, it is. And
I would.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to put out a really great product. So anyone that we hire, is higher end. They know that. And we've got a couple good teams. And
is Cassidy doing all the design?
She does a lot of the design. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. I help too, because I'm very much that way in the art. I love doing that stuff, but she's got a fantastic eye and a really good pulse and a feel on what people like. Are
you going to have to come up with a different design theoretically for each of these luxury flips, or are you going to try to work it into a similar model? I mean, I guess that'd be hard, because you might have a property in Evergreen versus Cherry Hills, and it's a totally different vibe, right?
Yeah.
Different architecture.
I think the vibe is important, to making sure, it kind of fits. But I think that you can somewhat model that stuff to each other. I don't want it to be cookie cutter where it's like, oh, we always do this and there, because then you lose your creativity.
Yeah.
And each time, man, I want to create. That is what I've learned was, just talking to others and them questioning me, what juices you? Because, for the last, a year or so, it was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I started a podcast with a buddy, and it was, called Life After Fame. And we interviewed former athletes and musicians about, what's life like after they're out of the spotlight. And that was really fun. It was really fun, but it was a third job. And I realized okay, no, I'm going to drop the ball with my family again. So we had to pull back and just put it on the shelf. Maybe at some point we'll pick it back up. I love doing that because it was creative. And you're probably well, you love here. I love talking to people and hearing their story and, connecting with them. And so, being creative for me, I don't know if that's for everybody, but it's super important because I'm an artist. Like I said, I love to create art and do things that people enjoy.
So. Yeah, same. And I'm super, super creative, not artistically, like I can't draw worth a shit.
Yeah.
You know, I can't play music worth it. I'd love to. It sounds awesome, but
Yeah.
you know, I grew up doing magic, and that was
That's
sort of
right.
my creative outlet. And
that's awesome.
that's my artistic ability. But also when it comes to thinking through the business opportunity, right? It gives me a creative outlet. But I think a lot of individuals that get into the mortgage business, I've interviewed a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, I just graduated with a degree in finance. I just graduated with a degree in real estate. And although that's great, they probably have some context, a lot of those individuals struggle in this industry because it's, I mean, yeah, you got to understand basic math, right?
Yeah,
like you
of
should be
course.
able to know in your head how much 5% down on 500,000 is, right?
Right.
Like basic stuff, but really 99% of it is sales.
Yeah.
It's relationships.
Yep.
It's sales, and marketing now is such a big component of it, right? Because it's no longer about just the old school belly to belly, face to face. That's a big part of it. But now with social, you're seeing you've got to be creative to be omnipresent and kind of be everywhere. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge in our industry.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know?
I think being a real estate investor is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I think I succeeded at it because I was a hustler. I've always been a hustler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I find that most entrepreneurs are that way. That's what
sure.
I'm talking about, being wired that way. And structure is good probably for us, as my business coach always tells me, but I don't like structure. I fucking want to break down the walls and like do my own thing and like freaking throw paint up against that wall, man. See this. That is being an artist and being an entrepreneur and being able to do your own thing and like kind of, you know, push past the structure walls of things.
Yeah.
And so when somebody doesn't have that, or, you know, maybe they're like, hey, I went to finance and you know, they're that kind of type. It is a struggle because being an entrepreneur, you have to be everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there isn't a fucking job where you're like, no, I'm above that. I'm not doing, especially when you're starting out, you're like, you have to jump in and do everything. I hate marketing. I still do it. I hate marketing. I just don't love doing that, but I have to do it. You know, I'll get in with some of my construction guys. Sometimes they think I'm freaking crazy, but this is back to the ADD. I'm a physical guy. So I have to, I love being physical. And so I'll get in there and freaking demo with them or freaking carry shit in, you know, knock down bricks, whatever. So
that probably helps a lot with the crew, right? Like they see the guy that's running the project also getting involved, and that probably goes a long way.
I think it builds, it builds trust and camaraderie. Yeah, like he's not just like over here like with his
right, and
you know, like a asshole that, you know, just is above them or anything like that. I was like, no, I'm not above you. I'm doing a different job. I'm using my brain, and you guys are choosing to do this. It's cool, but I'll come in and do it with you. And I like doing it. I wouldn't want to do it every day, but
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So when did you start getting into, I know we've talked about Joe Dispenza just as an example, but when did that sort of spiritual energy, meditation, when did that enter your life?
Gosh, probably like in my late 20s. So, you know, it's been probably 20 some plus years that I've been working on myself. What they say, working on yourself. Yeah. And guys like Joe Dispenza is recent. I think, you know, Tony Robbins was one of the first, and actually his mentor was one of my first guys. What was his name? Gosh,
Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn.
Yeah.
Jim Rohn. I met him personally because I was when I was actually, you know, my first, I don't know if it's entrepreneurship or not, but I was in an MLM.
Okay.
And
didn't Jim Rohn make his money from an MLM?
Yeah. I mean, he was part of it, and he was. So it was like Herbalife.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Herbalife.
And he was connected with that. And so I met Jim Rohn, and he was amazing. Just the way that he talked.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, I've never heard anybody
One
talk
of the
like
best
this.
communicators, man, and storytellers.
Yes.
And the ability, every time I watch a guy like that, or even a Tony Robbins, any great speaker, I am just like, man, like I really need to put effort and time and energy into becoming a better storyteller. It's something that I want to be good at.
Yeah.
Because I just admire people that can do it and that have the ability to captivate and persuade an audience. It's
amazing.
It's an amazing skill.
It
an
is.
art form. It's an art form, really.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. Yep.
So that's cool that you got to meet him.
Yeah, I got to meet him. And then from there it took off. I was hooked. And I've been hooked on personal development since then. Reading books, listening, to audios, podcasts now. Joe Dispenza is a huge influence on my life. The thing that I struggle with, that I think, others struggle with, is staying consistent, with that stuff. It's hard because, I have expectations of like, okay, I'm going to listen to this meditation and it's going to change my life. And it probably is and will. And I'm impatient. I'm an impatient motherfucker. I am. I'm just so impatient.
Same.
It's like, if it isn't happening today, then I'm like, fuck, go to the next thing. But that's probably my biggest struggle, I would say, with spirituality, meditation, working on yourself, those types of things. It's just sticking with it, staying consistent. I'm an idea person, so I constantly am bouncing around for ideas. And that's one of my biggest struggles, is that I struggle with implementation at times. Not so much that I've been able to run a business. Sometimes I don't know how I've
I think you've done okay with implementation.
Sometimes I feel like I don't know even how I did it, but I've got like, man, if there was something for ideas, like I've got ideas, and I've been told by, someone that's, I don't know, I don't know if you've heard of Gene Keys.
Oh yeah, dude.
So I'm wired in a way that, I'm
crazy.
I'm a manifester. I'm a generating manifester. And,
okay.
And so I download ideas like fucking all the time. Anyone that's ever been in a partnership with me, I drove them nuts, because they're like, God damn, can we just focus on this one? And I'm like, boom, what about this and this? And,
the Gene Keys are fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Like my buddy introduced me to that, the actual Gene Key book, which is about that thing.
Yeah, it's huge,
right. And then there's also, is it human design?
Human design is where, like my therapist, yes, and I'm not embarrassed to say I have a therapist. No. She's on call all the time.
I think a lot of us do.
No, and that's one of the things that's really good that's happened, is that's become more accepted. But my therapist told, human design. She's an expert in human design, and she'll still say these certain things like, hey, this isn't filled, and that's why you're like that. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? But she talks to me about, I'm, a manifesting generator, which I just download ideas. And it's super exciting. But the problem is that there's so many ideas that I get caught up in, like, shit, what do I do?
What do I pick?
What do I pick?
And
and go on. Yeah.
For those of you that haven't heard of Gene Keys or human design, just Google it. It is, I think and I'd be curious to see your like one sentence description of Gene Keys, but the best way I can describe it is, think of astrology on steroids, like times 1,000, that is so intricate and is so deeply rooted into who you truly are because of these Gene Keys, that when you have a therapist or somebody that's leading you through it, or even if you're reading it, and I think the three are what? Shadow, I forget the middle one, and the Sadai, right?
Yeah. Gosh, now I'm thinking, that sounds right.
So
obviously I need to
the
go back and
shadow
do more.
is basically sometimes who you might fall into in this particular category when you're kind of at your worst or by yourself and not having to display anything to anybody. The Sadai is sort of the enlightened state of that. So it gives contrast. And then I think the gift might be the middle one.
That sounds right.
And the gift is basically the how from transitioning from shadow into the Sadai. I know I'm probably talking gibberish, but it is one of the most fascinating things I've ever gone through. And that's where I got this, brother, the Alchemist. So I'm the Alchemist.
Nice.
And that's how we came up with the name of the show too.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah. It what it does, and I have to, jump into it more, but the book is, like this, but they do have, and I don't know the website, but online, the guy actually has a program that you can go through. I haven't gone through it, and I really need to now that I mention it, because it helps you understand yourself. And sometimes we don't understand ourselves. We're like, why do I keep doing that? Right? I keep fucking up in that area or dropping the ball. And the Gene Keys help you understand yourself, so that what I believe is that you're kinder to yourself. And when you understand truly yourself, you then can flourish now. Because I think a lot of the times we just fight up against ourselves. We're just running up against the wall.
Which path we should go down. And like what I took from it is it's almost confirmation bias in a way that gives you clarity on a deep level of really who you are.
Yeah.
And being able to trust it because it's so descriptive. There's zero you will read about yourself and who you are, and you will just know it to be true.
You just know it to be true.
On a deep level.
Yes.
And so then you can lean into that, even if in the past you fought it, or maybe it's been in the shadow and you've been taking a different path and you're like, shit, dude, that's been speaking to me forever and I've just ignored it. Maybe I should fucking go down that path.
Maybe I should look at it.
Yeah. Dude, I'd need to do more work with it as well, but it's
amazing stuff.
It's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
So what so you're looking to do about 4 of these a year? Some of these luxury flips, and you've mentioned coaching several times. So are you coaching anybody in real estate or flipping, or is that something you want to do?
That's a great question. I am not coaching anyone. I have taught other people just through, the years, some stuff, and had some partners that didn't know, and I, fully taught them how to do it. And then they went out and did it. By the way,
like this is the guy that you want as a coach is the guy that's like, I'm not really coaching on that, but they know everything about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're the guy that, like if I decided to ever get out of the mortgage business and just do investment real estate forever, I would call you and say, dude, like let's figure this out.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I've thought about, because I do love to coach. My wife's talking me into that part too. She's good at talking me into things, I guess. But she said, with these, let's get several under our belt. And then she said, then let's help others. Let's teach others. Yeah. She's like, you've got 20 years of this stuff in your brain that you could service other people with. And I like that idea. I like that idea. And I like the idea of teaching people to do now maybe what I do, as opposed to, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with doing volume stuff. There's a lot of guys I know that are crushing it and they're doing great. I'd love to teach someone what I'm doing now so that I feel like they would have more of their life back, because that's what it's about. It is. It's about taking vacations and being with your family. And I'm at every sporting event of my kids, every sporting event, and I'm so grateful for this profession that it's done that for me. And being an entrepreneur, my daughter played high school ball and I wasn't her coach. So of course I'm at her, club travel stuff because I'm the coach, but I was able to make every single game of hers this year.
awesome.
My son's as well. And it's awesome because that's where it's at for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to teach other people to be able to, not so that they can make $1 million. Yeah, that's part of it. Or whatever it is, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's to actually have their life back. Because, man, I'm a person that I love to golf. You know, all these years, I barely get out, 2 or 3 times a year. I want to be able to golf more. I want to be able to, like your wife, Soli, we want to be able to travel in the summer to Europe. I want to go to Italy and
We'll go
Greece.
together,
And absolutely, let's do it, man. We're in for that. And we've set that, my goals before were always monetary because I thought that that's where, Everest was.
Yeah.
And now it's more like I want the money so that it's the vehicle to really take me to my true goals, which is, going and traveling for 3 months or 4 months or 6 months if I want in Europe. We also want to live part-time in Hawaii. I hate the winters, man. I'm done. I grew up here. I'm so over the winter.
Yeah.
I want to live from January to May in Hawaii, in Kauai. I got a shirt here. I love Kauai. We love Kauai.
Island, man.
Yeah. And I want to live by the beach, and I'm a surfer. So I want to, do that kind of stuff. And I want to teach other people that it's available to them. And my vehicle is only one vehicle. God, there's so many more, to do it. But
what I'm sort of getting from this conversation that's really cool is like, I think a lot of people, they've either bought into the concept of like Kiyosaki talks about, go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a degree, buy the house with the white picket fence. Now you have kids and then you're in a bunch of debt. But so much of our society, I think, is bought into that. Now it's changing a lot. Like entrepreneurship is on the rise, which, by the way, I wouldn't recommend entrepreneurship to most people.
Right,
I mean, I think that people hear that word and they think, like you just go into entrepreneurship and you're going to make $1 billion. And it's like, man, it is a commitment. It's a grind.
It is.
It plays on your mind. Talk about depression and anxiety and the whole gamut of emotions and, working your ass off 15-hour days sometimes and not knowing if you're going to make it. And how do you hit payroll? I mean, there's 1,000 different hats that you have to wear. And I just really wouldn't recommend it to most people. And it's tricky, man, because especially in our industry, people a lot of times get into real estate because they, for whatever reason, right? Maybe their neighbor made a bunch of money as a realtor, they saw a TV show, or for whatever reason, they have this perception that real estate is where it's at. They're going to go make a bunch of money. And I would say that has been true for me.
Yeah.
But also it is a commitment like you wouldn't, if you want to perform at a high level, right? I'm not talking about somebody who's just, stay-at-home mom or dad that wants to do a couple deals a year and supplement. That's different, right? But if they're really trying to make a business out of it, I mean, it is an all-consuming. I don't know if I've ever met anyone or very few people that have said, I'm gonna have this job and do real estate at the same time. And once I'm more successful in real estate, I'll quit the job. I know there are people out there that do that, but I think at some point, and whether it's real estate or anything else, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. You have to jump and you got to go in head first. And, like for me, dude, the only reason that I think it worked out for me, I'll never forget. I came to Denver 15 years ago. I'd gotten out of the mortgage business in California and I was doing something else right when I got here. I had a little bit of money saved up, not much, but I got to a point where I'm like, why am I not back in the mortgage bit? I just felt compelled to get my license again out here.
Yeah.
But I remember talking to my sister and she goes, well, but Darik, you don't know anybody out here. How are you going to do this? And I didn't have a good answer for her, but my response was, because I just am.
Yeah.
I just knew I was going
You just chose to do it.
gonna figure it out no matter what, but I had to grind and hustle and meet people and figure it but if you don't have the personality for that, right? Or the drive or the ambition or being able to self-start, being able to deal with rejection and criticism, you might be better off at your job and doing a side hustle of some other kind.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, dude, I really appreciate having you on the show today, man.
Sure, man.
And,
thanks for having me.
I hope you come back. I definitely want to hear about, maybe next year, some travels and some of the new luxury flips that you've been doing. And for people listening, where can they find you?
You know, we do not have a website right now.
Facebook,
that
Instagram,
is going to be,
email,
you can find me on, Facebook. I'm just under Joe Mastriona. And then I actually do have the Dream Builders group is my company. Okay. And it does have a Facebook page. I know I'm like archaic here. I don't have tons of stuff, but we're working on that. So,
your wife yesterday, man, she mentioned to me, she's like, I don't know if she meant this or if she was just saying it, but she gave me the impression that she's like, I want to go all in on social. Like, I really want to build that marketing piece and make it a thing.
She does. Yeah, she does. She has a bigger presence than I do. She has an Instagram presence and stuff. I have no idea what that even is, but we can get it to you later. Yeah. But I'll work on it.
Dream Builders group.
The Dream Builders. The Dream Builders group.
The Dream Builders group on Facebook, or Joe Mastriona on
Facebook
as well.
Yep. On Facebook as well.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. Cool.
Dude, thank you so much.
Brother, thank you so much, man, for having me. It was so fun.
All right, guys. Peace out.
Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck, nah, I had to plan it. The way I work is out of this earth. I can feel the momentum. Need it all, no fractions. Dream it, then I got